Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And welcome to the long-awaited retrospective on Disney's Wayward Prince, a man who boldly stepped out of the mouse house and proceeded to reinvent the medium while the competition was spinning its wheels. From genetically enhanced rats to secret princesses, from a group of friends to a family finding each other, things are going to the dogs. Mark your calendars because it's Bluth-Tember!
Yeah.
And tonight we are starting this fabulous journey off with The Secret of NIMH. Da 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 da. That was terrible. Oh dear God, I apologize. I should have had that pulled up on my phone, but I didn't. Moving on. That was bad. Bad way to start, Tiki. This is a bucket list series for me, Dragon. You know this. I've been wanting to do this for several years now. Can you attest to that?
I can attest to that, yeah.
So I'm very excited to get this started. Um, I mean, just kind of like a thesis statement on Don Bluth in general, given that this is our first Bluth-Tember. And I mean, he's come up in conversation, but we haven't really done all that many podcasts with him as a center point. And Dragon, Don Bluth, I mean, for lack of a better term, Dragon, he's simply one of my animation icons. I mean, I just like, to me, he's right up there with the likes of like any of the Nine Old Men or, like someone like Miyazaki. It's like he just has such a legacy behind him with so few films that are really worth the actual legacy. And that's something that we're going to kind of cover through, eventually we're going to get through all his projects. This season is just going to cover the classics, the ones that he's really known for. But Dragon, you know what? I don't even care because I will say this run of 5 films that we're about to talk about and break down through the month of September, Dragon, it might be one of the best runs of any director in the animation medium. I mean, it's just like it's hit after hit after hit as far as I'm concerned. And of course, folks, just to break it down very, very simply as kind of like a thesis statement for Bluth, the thing that we admire about Bluth as a filmmaker is the philosophy where you can get as dark as you want with it as long as there's a happy ending on the other side. And that's sort of like Dragon. I don't know about you, but that's kind of like the North Star, if you will, for what we're doing with this podcast. We really want to take a look at that quote and examine it through each of these films. Am I on point with that?
Yeah, somewhat, yeah.
Somewhat. All right. So with that in mind, Drake, do you have any words about Bluth in general before we give the thesis for the movie?
Don Bluth is simply a fascinating creature. He just is, you know. Don Bluth, the man who left the House of Mouse, again, as you put it so wonderfully. And that's who he is. I mean, he's the guy who, and so one of the things when I think of Don Bluth, I keep thinking of that moment from Waking Sleeping Beauty, the documentary, where they just say that some animators viewed him as a Walt wannabe, some thought he was the real deal, and that's the fascinating question posed when you think of Don Bluth, because this is a guy who does very much so with this movie, and just kind of with the films that would follow. He very much started out just like Walt Disney did, in that kind of takes a ragtag group of animators, puts everything on the line for the big movie, and then it's just kind of like, especially in those early years, especially the movies that we're going to be getting through in this season. Uh, he's very much by the bootstraps, kind of going from movie to movie, trying to make some really good art before they shut the lights off.
Mhm.
And of course, like success kind of bounds, but it's more of kind of like success via the name before it's kind of like success seen by the world and by the critics. In some cases, mainly in Bluth's case, Bluth is he's kind of a great combination of. Imagine if you took Walt Disney and you took Brad Bird and you mixed them together, you kind of get Don Bluth in a sense, you
That's a
know.
great combination, actually. I can totally see that.
In so many ways, Bluth very much he's like Brad Bird in the because remember Brad Bird, as many animators did, Bluth was kind of the original in this case. Brad Bird, I forget exactly what year it was. He had a very similar origin to Don Bluth, where he was tired of kind of the studio made, basically the direction of the Disney studio, and then kind of that down period of the '70s, and I guess in Brad Bird's case, I want to say that early '80s period from Waking Sleeping Beauty. They kind of got sick of it, and he just kind of left and kind of did things his way, and of course, very much kind of the Iron Giant era of Brad Bird, if you will. It's kind of those years where we had those films in development that didn't quite go anywhere. But again, like those are films you die to see, you know.
Yeah.
And that's very much kind of what Bluth did, and just kind of made like a whole career of it. And it's the point is, Don Bluth, he's very interesting and very much passionate about what he does still. And it's like, honestly, he's kind of the closest thing you're going to get to. Like, he's not, I can't call him like the next Walt Disney by any stretch, but I can call him like a guy cut from the same cloth of a Walt Disney, like a guy this is the kind of guy you want, like, again, this is where you get the whole the wannabe of Walt Disney thing. Where again, he's kind of a wannabe, but a wannabe in a good way. He's the guy who he's idolizing Walt as we all do in some way, shape, or form. But he's actually kind of really manufacturing into his art and making it his own thing. If I'm making any sense with that.
Yeah, for sure. Right, so breaking down The Secret of NIMH Dragon, I will admit that out of the 5 films that we're going to be talking about this month, this might be the best on an artistic level, but it's also the one I have the least amount of nostalgia for. And the reason I have the least amount of nostalgia for it, Dragon, is simply put, this movie scared the shit out of me when I was a little kid, Dragon. I mean, I'm not even joking, man. This movie, I kind of refused to watch this thing as a kid. Like, Dragon, the look a peach thing, that dumb thing.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, I know that dumb thing.
okay, imagine that on steroids. Like, just all throughout the movie, there's this like unsettling sense of like, oh god, like I don't even know, like things just are not right with this movie. I mean, it starts like right off the bat where it's like the main character's son is like dying of pneumonia, and it's like that is it's one way to set the stakes for sure. Don't get me wrong, but as a little kid, you're just like right off the bat, it's just like you're thrown into this really harsh and depressing situation, and then you've got the terrifying designs of the rats, and and Nicodemus, even though he's a very noble character, is kind of terrifying in his own right from a design point of view. And then you've got the actual terrifying villain. I mean, Dragon, nothing in Don Bluth's career, in my opinion, comes close to the actual level of darkness seen in this particular movie. And I don't think it's his best movie. I do admire it, though. I do think it's very much a bold piece of art. Like I said, I think it might be the most artistic movie that he ever directed. He started out really strong. I will say that I think some of his a couple of his other more the Spielberg movies, if you will, Dragon. I think that's where the bread and butter of Don Bluth lies. But I mean, shit, as a starting point, like as the first film in your new animation studio, I mean, it's a killer. It really is a killer first film, Dragon. It really is. I mean, I will say it does have a terrific cast of characters as well that we're going to be breaking down. I mean, it's like both from an animation and artistic and a character point of view, this movie is just very, very strong on all fronts.
That it is. I guess for me, thesis to keep it simple, I would agree that I would say this is Don Bluth's masterpiece. His own words, and I agree with him. That is probably the best thing that he's done. Not, I agree in your sentiment. It's not my favorite thing Don Bluth's done. It's not my personal favorite thing. I'm most
I'm just going to put it out there just to build to it. My favorite thing that he's done is definitely the original Land Before Time. I think it's one of the best non-Disney animated films ever. We'll get there when we get there, folks. But go ahead.
I am interested to see how that holds up. I am interested to see how that holds up against Secret of NIMH for sure. Because that thing, I mean, off the top of my head, I want to say this is the masterpiece. But maybe when we get to Land Before Time, maybe my mind will be changed. I don't know. But what I can say is that I know it's not my favorite of the Don Bluth movies. I only experienced this one kind of in recent years. I'm being frank, Secret of NIMH, because I kind of had some of my old favorites with Don Bluth, and I really kind of have felt the need to go back to Secret of NIMH because I guess in some part maybe one I didn't it wasn't quite on my radar because again a lot of the Don Bluth movies are somewhat cult classics. Some of them,
Mm-hmm.
like, NIMH is kind of like that. NIMH's kind of like kind of a lesser known Iron Giant. I'd frame it, Where I think everyone knows. Everyone knows Iron Giant, but people know about Secret of NIMH, but maybe not as many.
So, yeah, it's definitely not as well known as, like I said, as the Amblin productions for sure.
Well, and speaking of which, again, getting back to that's kind of my nostalgia for it, I guess, which is not very much, but getting, I guess, the overall thesis is very simple. Is again, Don Bluth's masterpiece that, in some ways, may have paved the way for the underdog studios to impress, like years later with like something like Iron Giant, like with Warner Brothers, like something like that, where it ignores all the preconceived notions, yet yet it's true to the core fundamentals of the medium
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
making a movie, and it's grounded by all of this, yet it's granted by such a simple story of a mother protecting your children, whatever it takes. That's just, that has a core roots of that as the story, as well as just kind of like it's doing everything that the medium was cultivated with, that we've kind of lost in kind of that stretch of time since like the late 1930s or the early 40s, however you want to look at it, to the 80s. So it's really fascinating. So that's Secret and them thoughts for you folks.
All right, so Dragon, we covered some of the background of Don Bluth in general, and I feel like that kind of ties into the background of the movie. So how do you want to frame the rest of the background?
Well, let me see. Let me get into a few like some little factoid statistics here. Let's say there's not a whole. I kind of wove a little bit of it into the when we get to it. Some of the categories a little later on. So
Okay.
let's see. Okay. Regardless, so right before hmm. So of course, before this, Don Bluth, of course, he was at the Disney company, as we already know. But he along with Gary Goldman, basically the two founders of most, if not all, the Don Bluth pictures. These two guys, they're thick as thieves. They're kind of a buddy picture within themselves. There's a movie I like to see. See, of course, they both were at Disney, and very much kind of fans of the Walt Disney style, and pretty much what everyone signs up for, kind of the age of the nine old men, as it were. But over time, mainly after Walt's passing, there's that you drift into that kind of waking sleep and beauty era in the 80s. But this is like during the late 70s, like around 79, I want to say. They're becoming disenfranchised with really disillusioned with Disney, because with Walt, a lot, especially with the feature animation division, the ambition was really waning. This is during a period that's the ambition was gone. It's kind of like films made on an assembly line. Like where you get like the Aristocats sort of Disney.
Robin Hood,
Big,
Rescuers.
precisely. That's the thing. You get kind of like these assembly line movies. There's kind of made, and basically it was like there
It was
was a
kind of
last.
like the original 2000s.
It's kind of. And the big thing was, the last straw for Don Bluth was that there was a point where I believe it was on Rescuers down, so not it was on the original Rescuers. And when they're doing Rescuers, there was like these animation errors in the.
You say Rescuers Down Under because Rescuers Down Under is obviously the far superior
Well,
movie.
it is, but I mean, getting back on point. So the original Rescuers, basically, there are a lot of animation errors, like specifically in the painting around the eyes of the characters, and this is like an example of like what the last straw was for him, where it's basically Disney was cutting corners again per this assembly line process, where they're really dishonest about it too. He'd point this out and says, "Oh no, it has to be that way. It's saving money, really, and in actuality, it does not save money at all." And it's just like we just don't want to put the effort into it. And that was kind of the last straw, and that's where famously Don Bluth on his birthday, he and a handful of animators. The number always kind of changes. I heard it was 9. Apparently, it was up to 20. I don't know. The point being, at least more than 9 animators. He took more 9 animators with him as he left Disney on his birthday. It's kind of the ultimate insult when you really think about it to Disney, but I guess it was kind of warranted. So he leaves. He forges Don Bluth Productions, and of course, the fascinating thing is he kind of parallels the journey of Walt Disney in making Snow White. You kind of go into the Hyperion days of Disney, where it's kind of a he and his brother. His brother also went along with him, Toby Bluth. So it's kind of a very much like a Walt and Roy thing to an extent as well. They're kind of forging the animation company. By the way, it's a little tease at the rest of these movies we're going to be getting to. Don Bluth has a terrible track record with going bankrupt with his animation studios because he puts that
Oh,
much
yes,
effort
he
in these
does.
movies. That's what I'm saying. Like Don Bluth Productions, the name may change often, folks, because Don Bluth Productions, I believe, only lasts for this movie, if I'm recalling.
Right.
So the idea is they do a short with, I believe, Banjo, the woodpile
Banjo the
cat.
Woodpile Cat.
So they do a short with him, and basically a few smaller things. I don't know if it was just that, maybe a few smaller things along the way before they work up to a feature film. Bluth wants to, and basically Bluth has an idea. Bluth had an idea that he pitched to Disney. He pitched to one of the 9 old men. I think it was Wolfgang. He pitched to one of the 9 old men, and he pitched him. As you can probably tell, Mrs. Brisby. She comes from the book Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of NIMH. And apparently this is a book that came out in 72, was very popular, got a lot of acclaim, and basically around that time, Bluth saw this and, hey, let's do this as an animated movie, he pitches to Wolfgang. Wolfgang shoots down for two reasons. One, it was too dark, which, as we know, Bluth's philosophy did not stop him internally.
Right.
And secondly, and more ridiculously, we're doing enough mice movies, because we're doing The Rescuers, we have Mickey Mouse, we don't need to do any more. You know, we got the mouse market cornered, man. We don't need to do anything else with that. So
I mean, with the Rescuers is a little similar to this. I don't think that's as egregious as the point as you're making it out to be.
well, what I mean is, it doesn't sound like the best reason not to make a movie. We're doing too many mice movies.
Yeah, fair point.
I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm just saying, it's like, I don't know about it. Anyway, point being, the project gets shelved, and Bluth, as he kind of walks out, as he walks out within that first year of again figuring out what we're going to do next, like, what, let's do that as a movie. Let's do that as our first feature. I really love that story. Want to see it adapted. So they're adapting the book, Miss Frisbee and the Rats of NIMH. And very much, they put it simply, to economize a little bit here, it's pretty much a Mask of the Phantasm situation, but by Disney standards, which means a little bit more time. Essentially, by kind of a feature length, like kind of you're trying to compete with Disney type movie. They had practically the same budget as Mask of the Phantasm, which again by Disney standards really isn't much. So they had $5.7 million and 30 months. The one thing Phantasm did not have 30 months, but the point being, they were very. So again, a little compensation there, mind you. The point being, like, relatively shorter than what Disney would have to work with, both financially and time wise. And they end up having to mortgage their homes, very much like Walt Disney. Again, just I don't know if like the jest, like, you think you can leave my company? Let's see you earn that title, mister.
Earn it.
Earn it. Absolutely. There were a few calculated changes from the book. Like, for example, we focused on Mrs. Brisby. That was a big one. And also they added all the magic and mysticism. I believe that was not in the book. Mainly focused more on basically the flashback angle of the movie.
The hard science of it.
Pretty much. It's from what I understand. I haven't read the book myself, but that's what I've heard.
Uh-huh.
And speaking of Brisby, and of course, as I mentioned, folks, I did not make a mistake. There's Mrs. Frisbee in The Rats of NIMH, and there's Mrs. Brisby from Secret of NIMH. That is for a reason. Yeah. I don't know if you know this, or I'm going to assume you know this. They had to change her name for the most hard to believe of reasons. Whammo, the company that makes the toy, the Frisbee.
Oh God.
Ones that make the Frisbee, they were afraid associating with this movie would not play well, and the point was it was a copyright issue. So very last minute, like, I don't know how close to the end of production they were, but they had to change this, and there was a big problem that most of the actors had recorded their lines, and that was the end of it. It's not like now we can really call the actors back. It's like what you had was what you had, and you were stuck with that. Some actors could re-record, but for the most part, they were in trouble because you have all these Mrs. Brisby lines, Mrs. Frisbee, Mrs. Frisbee. How are you going to change that to Brisby? What they did so clever. The sound design on this movie must be ingenious because you can barely tell. I can't tell at all is what I'm saying, I guess. But you have all these. They took like Burr from like Breeze and like reactions and everything. Points they got the BR in front of the FR, so that's how we get Brisby as her name.
Oh man, dude, that's such tricky sound editing.
I know, and I don't know how because you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell, right? You couldn't tell any Fs.
No, I couldn't tell at all.
Completely seamless.
Oh, that's impressive.
And as I mentioned, according to Bluth, in his opinion, this is the best movie that he ever made. Not a favorite necessarily, but again, he didn't say not a favorite. I'm just inferring. Well, again, he said best, so maybe he likes A Land Before Time or another one for all we know. I don't know.
Dragon, of course, with The Land Before Time, it's very much my favorite because it's one of the first animated films I ever saw. So we'll get into all that.
And we'll get to
I don't want to say Land Before Time is the best. I do think there is a solid argument for this being the best.
Yeah, we'll get to mine after yours, I believe.
All dogs?
Well, if you're going to say it, though. Yeah, all dogs. Go to heaven, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, also a little kind of a bit of a downer fun fact. I won't linger on kind of, again, there's kind of, let me put it this way, there's somewhat of a not as tragic, but there's somewhat of a kind of a Barcy-esque thing to this movie. Again, not as dark, but just this is Elizabeth Hartman, the voice of Mrs. Brisby's last movie, unfortunately. And, it's a shame. All right.
Very iconic role to go out on.
Yeah. If you're gonna, it's a solid one. Honestly, it's just she was a really shy person. It's a really great role for her. I don't know. It's really good.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So, Dragon, let's break down the story.
Yes, and of course, folks, you've seen the movie. We don't need to tell you what happens in this movie. It's secret and in for pity's sake, you know. Mother saves her children and kind of deals with some mysticism and some sci-fi horror of rats. You already got the story. You know what happens. But let's talk
I
about
mean,
what.
first of all, what do you think of the stakes of the kid dying of pneumonia? Because, like I said, that's one thing that really stuck out to me as a kid. Of like, oh man, this movie isn't fucking around.
Really good stakes, I gotta say. It's again like we're not a child could die, not just die in the sense of the point is like the kid is doomed in one of two ways, either by plowing or by sickness. So the
Right,
kid
right.
there are great stakes that are illustrated to us, and basically, okay, again, sick child, but also just a plow is coming, and we cannot move our stationary location alone. So like it's really great, very simple, really great stakes. Let me put it this way, Tiki, and bridging off of that. To me, the thing that sticks out most to me, the thing that impresses me most, kind of really given a really good watch this time around, is the wonderful use of scale
Mhm.
that
Oh yeah.
establishes it really helps, especially in regard to the stakes we were talking about in the story overall. Like all we need to do in this movie is move a cinder block house in the backyard of a farmhouse. It's all we need to do in this movie. It's so small. It's so it's so small. It's just like okay. It's like it's one location in the grand sense of things. Like we're really local when you really think about it. Like we don't really travel that much, but again, it's like we accomplish so much within this small space. But scale is what makes things terrifying and mystical. Makes it a real movie. You know, it's tremendous the use of scale in this film.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Take that, cats. Okay, let's see. So, I what do you think of the I think one of the core themes of this film that I picked up on over the years, and it's pretty obvious. It's not like I'm some big deep philosophical film analyst for coming up with this, but science versus nature, Dragon.
It's a really great. I love that idea. Now, here's the thing: I love it, but I also it's the only thing I question in the movie. But it's a question. This is like an easy, like we don't care question. It's not a problem at all. It's just something that kind of does make it. If you really look at, it, there is somewhat of an issue. But if you want to look at the philosophical side of things, well, there's something there. It's like you have basically the better way of looking at it is like you have the known and the unknown. That's kind of what the movie's about. You have the known that is that's kind of your science. You have the unknown, which is kind of the mystical Nicodemus of it all. So you have like those two really interesting things. Both are compelling, and they both kind of jive naturally. And of course, in the themes of the movie as well is that our bad guy wants to remain in the known, and Mrs. Brisby, why we love her is that she's going into the unknown for a good reason. So it's kind of that those two sides of her arc, and not of her arc as well as just kind of what she's going up against. It's that's really interesting. That's where the movie's really firing all cylinders on kind of a thematic level, you know?
Definitely, definitely. Um, I mean, I do. We're kind of holding off on talking about Mrs. Brisby herself, but
Yeah.
I will say that her story, her arc through the movie is Dragon. Just something to kind of tease up when we talk about her. I think she is the Ripley of animated female characters.
Easily.
Like she kicks so much ass.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. All right.
I mean, the only thing, again, just on the flip side of it, just to kind of address it, though, again, it's like, it's like, again, we have this really grounded reveal. The big secret of NIMH of it all is, it's science. And that's really fascinating. And that kind of like complements like what we're doing with our worldview here. We're okay. We're in a world with, and this thing he kind of brings in other movies, like when we get to American Tail as well, where we have a world that includes humans and mice. It's not he kind of learned, when we did all anthropomorphic, mixed results. It was just kind of like okay, well it's Robin Hood with animals, so it's what we did in
Yeah,
this
I mean,
case.
I get the feeling that that the book kind of like tackles more of the pseudoscience, and this is basically just an excuse to make them anthropomorphic.
Yeah, but again, it's anthropomorphic with
It
like just really
simplifies
great.
it, though.
Yeah, we have like theological logic, which just is what coats this movie.
Yeah,
Of course, for me,
yeah,
it's a big winning quality of any movie. We have just this great logic. Well, yeah, if you were in this world, this would happen. Yeah, we're
naturally.
okay. you're on a farm, and obviously when the plow comes out, you can tell that by the changing of the seasons, almost like a Bug's Life thing. Where okay, well, when the last leaf falls, that's kind of a big symbol of something bad's about to happen. Of course, when the frost comes, that's not good, especially if you have a kid with pneumonia. You're screwed in 8 ways to Sunday. Yeah. So, Tegan, we spoke earlier, again, the crux of everything we're kind of doing here is talking about Don Bluth's philosophy. So, I heard another way he put that philosophy. It's very similar to the way you've summed it up. The way I love the way you phrased it this one time, though. He says, the dark lets us appreciate the light and the happy endings. Basically, the light being the happy endings.
Absolutely.
Without the dark, we can't appreciate the light, being the better way he put it. So I thought that was so great. And again, that's so one, we kind of see that a little bit visualized, but again, we earn. If you want to look in kind of the Bambi context, I don't mean to make all the Disney parallels, but you kind of have to with Don Bluth to an extent.
You really do. I mean, especially when we get to Anastasia, then it's going to be impossible not to make the Disney parallels.
But you hear what I'm saying, though? It's kind of like the Bambi parallel of like when we do the. I think you might have said this. I can't remember if I'm just paraphrasing. I've heard from you once. I'm not sure, but it's kind of the old Bambi thing where you have like the hunt, you had the big like, oh my god, mother, moment, then with tra la la la, that whole thing. We have that transition. It just doesn't feel earned. Like, oh man, that's a really jarring shift between things. In this case, you kind of live with the darkness for a while, and then you kind of like, oh my god, thank goodness we have something happy happen at this point in the movie.
For sure, definitely.
The edge of my seat during this movie. I've chewed the arms off of my seat. Look at this.
And Dragon, I think the film that does this the best is, say it with me, The Land Before Time. But but Secret of NIMH, I don't know. I feel like this movie, like I said, the only problem with it is that it's almost too dark for its own good. I mean, I shouldn't say that because as an adult, it's awesome. But as a kid, I wouldn't show this to a kid, Dragon. I'll go as far as to say that. Like, I wouldn't show this to a little kid. I might show this to maybe a 10-year-old who's into animation. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't for every kid out there.
Yeah, because obviously there's some really gruesome sword fights at the end of this thing. Like that, you might want to caution.
The sword fights, just in general, kind of like the harsh, pseudo-nihilistic tone to some of it. Kind of the creepy designs on some of the characters, like the really, very high stakes, like the uncomfortably high stakes.
I don't think a kid comes out of this movie, a little kid comes out of this movie not terrified of cats.
Or owls, for that matter.
Well, to be fair, the owl was friendly, though. So, I mean, he was nice.
It doesn't matter if I don't give a shit if that owl's friendly. He's still terrifying. Let's see. Shit, I had a point.
Okay, terrifying visuals to your kids.
Oh yeah, well, I'm sorry. Just once again, I think that I would show a kid something like The Land Before Time or American Tail. Wouldn't necessarily show a kid All Dogs Go to Heaven, but that's a different story.
Right.
Let's see. Anything else to break down with the story?
Well, yeah. Again, just another way. Again, with the Brad Bird parallel I was going with. Again, like you have these life and death stakes and the blood and everything. We really go for it. We have rats being injected with stuff. Again, we don't want to shy away from anything. We do all this because one, it reflects our world, and because of that, we really identify. That's a way of really identifying with an anthropomorphic character, where you see yourself, you see humanity reflected in it just so honestly. And again, all of this, terrifying or not as it may be, it makes you just root for that happy ending. And it's kind of the Brad Bird philosophy of his animation philosophy, especially tackling sort of especially do a Saturday morning. He basically gives the old Saturday morning speech, which basically Saturday morning cartoons are at their best when you know that there are stakes. It's otherwise it's going to be like, oh, you're going to be fine. You stop the bad guy, you go away unscathed. Where if you go up against the bad guy and you know that you could die or there are dead bodies or something, if someone actually dies within the course of the movie, or of course, whoever the work you're watching is, then there are stakes. We can't shield children from stakes.
Transformers movie made an impact on so many people.
Exactly. You need to show that there are stakes, and therefore you kind of take away the right lesson, and also you just kind of you see it accurately reflected. And you're not teaching the kids anything if everything goes, it turns out fine. I think you might be encouraging some dangerous risk for all you know.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so let's move on to the characters. Of course, let's start with Mrs. Brisby, the Ellen Ripley of animation. Holy shit, what an awesome character, Dragon.
Yeah, it's been a while, and it's like, man, Mrs. Brisby, she holds up so well.
Oh yeah, she totally does, man. I mean, did she ever not hold up?
No. I was just wondering. It's like, I wonder if I was just kind of putting her on a pedestal. I wonder if she is as good as
No,
she.
she is on a pedestal, man. She is like, she is the pedestal when it comes to non-Disney female characters. I
Well,
think.
Tiga, when they inevitably remake this one in live action, I want Vera Farmiga.
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
Vera Farmiga to play Mrs. Brisby.
Fuck. No, no, no. I mean, that's solid casting, Dragon, but no. I mean,
Fair
I
enough.
will settle for like a CG remake if they do like I don't know.
I'm kidding. Don't worry about it.
It's solid casting. It's solid casting.
No, but seriously, Mrs. Brisby, here's the thing I think what works about her. Here's the X factor. I think she's just so refreshingly a unique choice of character. Like one, she's a widow. Two, she's got 4 kids, which is not easy. And of course, from what we understand, it's like a recent passing of her husband too. So really seeing her kind of freshly dealing with the loss of her husband, and like her kid's getting sick at the worst possible time. It's like we just the insurmountable odds thrust upon this really just kind of this really kind of shy kind of characters, like like not shy, but I mean it's kind of this really is kind of pleasant, really friendly person. She is like, I think her indomitable quality is how she just kind of her personability when she meets strangers really comes in handy, and that's how she's able to kind of like she just meets people for the first time, and she shows them proper respect. She kind of befriends them, and it really helps her at the end of the day. So it's really it's really nice character.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, I think the word of the day when it comes to her is brave, Dragon. She's got like guts of steel, my friend.
She does, and of course, all of this, we epitomize. She honestly, as a character, she epitomizes true bravery. Yeah, she is. The word brave should be, should be tattooed on the, should basically be engraved on the back of that little amulet instead of all the words that are actually engraved on the back of that amulet. Just like brave. You get it. And that big amulet again, it leads to that big payoff with the amulet, which is sublime. Just the idea like her bravery is kind of personified. Well, it's kind of literalized and kind of helps save the day. It's kind of energized more accurately, I suppose, and it kind of like she's able to kind of turn her internal character trait into something that kind of saves the day. Some people say Deus Ex Machina. I say, you know what? It's earned, man. We saw that bravery in action, man. It's powerful enough to lift.
Okay, first of all, I don't for anyone who complains about Deus Ex Machina and animation, like not the place, not the place. You know what I mean? I really don't care about Deus Ex Machina when it comes to animation, Dragon. I I don't want to get up on a pedestal and go on a rant here.
Maybe we should go on.
What?
Maybe you shouldn't go all encompassing with Deus Ex Machina and animation. It seems a little, kind of, I don't know.
No. But I'm just saying. I'm just talking about like the people who like poke like all the maybe not Deus Ex. Yeah, you're right. I should be all. I don't want to go on a whole thing. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I get your point. Though. I take your point that what I mean, especially in the old kind
like
of
animation is all encompassing, and I don't think that looking for plot holes is like the most healthy thing to do when it comes to an animated movie. That's basically the point I'm trying to make.
Right. All right. Also, just want to kind of say this too. I like the design of Mrs. Brisby too. It's like a little red like shawl thing that she has. Like,
absolutely.
Red is absolutely her color, which gets mirrored in that amulet, and just kind of it all makes sense, kind of in a good way. It all makes sense.
All right. So let's talk about Jeremy, a character that hasn't held up as well, to say the least.
Wait, what do you mean he hasn't held up as? Oh, well, come on, that's not as bad as you're making it out to be.
I don't know, Dragon. I don't know. Look, Dom DeLuise has voiced some pretty iconic Don Bluth characters, and Jeremy is, he's definitely he's a cool design. I don't know. He's pretty irrelevant to the plot, Dragon. That's one thing.
It's Dom DeLuise. He's lovable.
Oh my god. I don't know, dude. I think he's more of an idiot in this thing than anything else. And I feel like he almost kind of gets in the way.
I think, look, there's only one scene with him I'm not crazy about. It's the scene. Well, here's the thing. I think he's good in this scene. I think that the kid's just leaving him tied up. It's like, oh, come on, really? They're just going to leave him tied up.
Right.
Like, that's what bugs me about that scene, where he's telling them everything they want to know, and he's going to leave them tied up like that. That's what bugs me. But, I mean, no, I like Jeremy, man. It's like, that to me was a really charming element of the movie, where Jeremy pops like,
I mean,
oh, man.
it does show you it does do a good job of showing you how effective
Brisby.
Brisby is at forming relationships on the spot. You know what I mean? Like, kind of first impressions and everything.
Yeah. He basically put it this way: Jeremy to me is like the Kramer to Brisby Seinfeld. That's kind of how their dynamic works, you know. He's just kind of like the kooky neighbor who's is he going to be a big help? Maybe not, but he's lovable.
So you really think that you really don't think that Jeremy like is not the least bit obnoxious or anything?
Not really, no. I mean, there's thing. I think it might be in part because you knows how to manage him. He's like, okay, just gives Jeremy like a task to accomplish. Because I mean, from what I understand, I'm not saying there's like a point, like it's not a feather, no pun intended, in Jeremy's cap or anything. But the fact like they were originally going to have like another like annoying side character. They were going to give her a legit annoying side character through the movie, and then decide not to do that. And Jeremy's pops up now and again. And the fact she gives him like a task to keep him busy, but also initially, hey, keep my kids safe, which is a valid task. Of course, he kind of like.
Okay, maybe if the keeping the kids thing safe had more of a payoff, then I would I think its presence would be more warranted.
If anything, that's the only thing for me on the rewatch that hurts Jeremy is the fact that him getting tied up like the way he does, and just kind of like it's like we kind of take that really nice endearing moment, and I was just like, okay, well, now he's just tied up, and then he's just kind of popping up a little bit later on. So it's just okay. Well, he's basically distract him. He's like, hey, okay, Jeremy has a meet and greet with Miss Brisby, which is cool. Then she gives him a task, which we see, and then it's okay. So he's just tied up, and then like, okay, well now she just distracts him until the end of the movie, which is in that regards like, yeah, but he's a nice guy though.
All right, moving on.
Let's see. So speaking of said kids, so Auntie Shrew and the kids.
All right, Auntie Shrew is a really good kind of like. I like how she's not a bad person, but she's not a protagonist either. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she's kind of God. You know what? I'm gonna kick.
I mean, it kind of falls into like some of the moral gray that Don Bluth is going to be getting into with some of his characters.
Certainly. I mean, I feel Auntie Shaw is very, very relatable in the sense of like I got a sense she's like either a neighbor. Like I don't think she's an actual aunt personally. I don't think she's the. I don't think she's. I don't know what the lineage is on that one. I just don't want to even guess. But the point being, I don't think Auntie Shaw is actually like an aunt. I think it's just like what they call her. My assumption, and you can blame me if you have anything different by all means. I always felt she was like a neighbor or like a fellow widow aiding the recently widowed Mrs. Brisby. That's what I always thought of.
I like that idea.
That's basically she's helping out, and that's why like she's not one for really taking care of the kids or anything, but she might, for all we know, she maybe is similar to the feeling, and she's like she's really stuck up a little bit of prissy, she's very kind of neighbor lady esque, like oh your children, this boy is a spoiled brat, she's like again whatever you say about Auntie Shaw though, you got to admit though. It's awesomely brave what she does during that plow sequence, during that tractor sequence. I mean, she like is unplugging the gas and everything. Say Brisby and the kids. Like that's really cool. It's like springs into action. Yeah, we're losing points to that whole like she's really not listening to Regan. She's kind of a loudmouth. That's where we get the.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying like I can't exactly call her a protagonist because of the not listening to reason thing.
Well, we know anyway, she's not a protagonist because Mrs. Brisby's the protagonist. She's more of a supporting character.
Well, you know what I mean, though. We're not really necessarily supposed to be rooting for her.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. She's not morally. It's like not morally gray, but it's kind of like in terms of I guess likably gray. If that makes any sense.
Likably gray. I like that.
There's probably a far better term that I'm not. I guess likable. I guess
she's gray on the likability scale.
I guess I don't. You know what I mean. You know what I'm getting at. So the kids. Let's face it. This is not necessarily a wholly negative thing. But yeah, the kids.
But hey, Will Wheaton.
That's good for Will Wheaton. Good for him. But on the whole, look, the kids are just kind of.
Martin is going to turn into a much different character in the sequel.
I rewatched some of that just to see how it.
Oh man, I like to pretend that thing doesn't exist.
Oh god, so terrible.
Well, if it would have actually given Mrs. Brisby any screen time at all, I would respect that thing more.
God, it's
But
ridiculous.
the fact that they don't do anything with Mrs. Brisby, it's just like, nah, forget
I
it.
just completely forgot that. I'll say one more thing. We'll erase that from this. Honestly, we'll erase it from this whole conversation about Secret of NIMH, because it's just degrade Secret of NIMH in the grand sense of things. How we literally take footage from the movie and we add things that did not exist. So we
All
add the
right.
fact that, hey, remember the son of Jonathan Brisby will be a big deal. And we not at any point in this movie, especially given what happens in Nicodemus, could this at all have happened, nor will it happen going forward. Yes. For a crappy
Yeah,
spin-off,
great.
your main character is the kid who is sick during the whole movie. Stupid.
um,
Anyway.
yeah, Timmy is really just a plot device. Martin is probably the kid with the most personality, but that's not really saying much.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback. One of my nitpicks with the movie, it's not a major thing. It's just something that in the animation, because everything else, it's compelling what's going on, but there's one logic hole for me. When the house is sinking, and basically whenever the house is momentarily catching a blaze, when it's being shifted around, all things are going to heck in the house, inside the house, and we check in with them. There's no way Timmy's alive during those scenes.
Yeah, especially after they establish the stakes.
Like, for starters, like, he can't even go outside because the chill might get him, which, I mean, I understand it's like a legit pneumonia thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking major points off that, but the fact that, like, okay, if you have a house that is sinking in the mud, and it's filling up, and from what I can recall, Timmy's either off to the side or in the lower deck of that place. He's a goner.
Yeah.
And we didn't see Timmy during that scene. So,
I mean, do we even need to acknowledge the two girl characters? Because
I mean, they have cutesy dialogue during. Again, all the scenes with the kids. I mean, again, it boils down to that Jeremy scene where it's kind of cute, but again, kind of has a zero payoff. So the kids are just plot devices.
All right. So Justin and ages. Dragon, I will say Justin might be one of my favorite characters.
Justin's great, man. He is. He's kind of the nobleman of the rats.
And honestly, Dragon, this is kind of one of the reasons why, like, I would honestly cut Jeremy if it meant giving Justin a bigger role.
I mean, look, I understand Justin is a great character, and I would like to see more from him. But by the same token, I would never have the heart to cut Dom DeLuise. I never would, man.
Fucking. Whatever. But
it's not just that too. It's like his character was fun. If it was just like if it was like a troll in Central Park, Dom DeLuise, then I would heavily cut him. At least I keep him in a little bit, but I'd heavily cut him. If it were the case of. But in case like Jeremy was harmless, man. Maybe I cut one of his scenes and give that scene to Justin, if anything.
There we go. That's a compromise I can live with.
I do that.
Oh, pleasure to do business with you, Dragon. See you next week.
Yes. All right. No, but Jeremy, you know what? I caught this on the rewatch. If you notice, I think Mrs. Brisby. Of course, they have no screen time for this, so I don't blame them. But if you notice, I think Mrs. Brisby, she kind of takes a liking to Justin. She's a little charmed by him.
Yeah, she is. She is for sure.
Yeah, because they have that initial meeting before I believe Ages like shows them the way when they basically go for the big rat meeting, and she's like he bakes the big he has the hilarious introduction where he pretends to be a guard like, oh, what are you doing here? I'm just kidding you guys, just a joke. Relax, that whole thing.
I mean, he is a charming guy, man. I mean, he really is.
Absolutely.
And I like that he's a man with a code, but he doesn't take things uber seriously at the same time. Like, I think that's a great mix of personality traits.
Absolutely, he's a smart. He's also the smart guy in the room because he's the one saying, "Hey guys, let's go with this Thorn Valley idea. Let's move forwards." Again, he's kind of in the Mrs. Brisby camp of we got to move forward past things here. We got to go into the unknown versus like Jenner's whole thing. Like, let's just stay where we are. Where he's just like, guys, let's move here. Let's do the smart move again. Plow is coming, not good for us. So let's bear in mind they don't really know that, I guess. But it's less the plow, it's more of the other thing. But more of the NIMH guys coming. More of the the National Institute of Mental Health coming for him, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Ages.
Yeah, Ages is cool, man. Ages is he was kind of a comrade of Jonathan Brisby, the last of he's the other half of the surviving mice. That's pretty good.
You know what I really like about him is that his intro, we kind of just assume that he's going to be like another sort of just plot device character just to get the medicine to Timmy, and he ends up being a lot more than that.
Yeah, I do love that because initially I'm with you absolutely, Tiggs. In that first watch, I always thought it was like he's just like the town doctor or something. He's the town
Yeah,
doctor, the town
yeah.
builder, the inventor, and of course, one we get a reason for why he's building, why a rat can build anything, well, why a mouse can build
Crazy
anything.
old Maurice.
Exactly. One we get a reason like, well, how can he build this stuff anyway? Where of course, just outside the
Right,
conceit, like it's a car. Outside of the conceit, like, well, it's animation, therefore, like anything's possible. So outside of that, it's the fact of he's super intelligent because of that shot.
Oh,
And again, it has that historical importance. It's just like, oh, a little fun. It's like when it's like, oh man, look at that, Mr. Ages is there, cool. And that's why he's all friendly towards Mrs. Brisby because he knows he knew her husband. That's kind of nice. It adds a little pathos to him deep down. And I always love that he's a good guy. He's a little hesitant to help her initially, but you know what? He can't shake. He's a good neighbor. That Mr. Ages.
yep.
Yeah,
And like every other character, he very much exhibits a lot of bravery in this movie.
absolutely. Gets a broken
I feel
leg.
like bravery is like a running theme in this movie, not just for Mrs. Brisby, but for all the characters, I think.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about one of the coolest characters in the movie. Let's talk about Nicodemus.
Yeah, Nicodemus is a great design, of course, in terms of classic literature and like mythology. He like the Gandalf or the Obi-Wan, like the wise old sage who helps you out and sets you off on your journey before succumbing to a fate that you have to then step into his footsteps.
Yeah, he's just kind of
So
this.
he's
He's the
very much
mystic
rooted
wise
in
man.
that kind of like very much rooted in that kind of like classic archetype.
Absolutely, he's very. I love how respectable he is. I love how just basically the guy's a born storyteller. He's kind of our storyteller in revealing the secret of him as a thing. But he also it kind of adds basically the mythic Exodus story for rats essentially is kind of what the
Mhm.
secret of him boils down to. And yeah, I just love the way. I think my favorite part of his story when he's relaying that sequence is. I looked at the label and I could read it. Like to open the door, lift the latch. Like that's such an epic moment in that thing too. It's like you have your narrator who was there saying, and then I could read it. That's cool. And that thing, I love that he. I love how I don't. It's gonna sound so simple, like, but I love how nice he is to Mrs. Brisby, and that just shows you her effect on people. It's just so nice. This guy could be really intimidating, but Nicodemus right off the bat is just so welcoming and friendly towards her. But again, he's like not friendly to the point where he's like he's bending over backwards for her, but he's just like come close, that whole thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, and in a sense, he gives her something to unlock her potential, basically manifest the good within her, manifest her bravery, and of course, he's very key. Yeah, in some senses, he's a plot device and kind of Mr. Exposition, but no, he doesn't feel like that at all. He just feels like it's exposition of the highest order, one could say.
I mean, if it's exposition, it's freaking epic exposition.
Exactly, man. I heard they were gonna again. This, as I told you with the book, there's supposed to be more of a focus on that flashback. But I gotta tell you, what we get
Mhm.
is effective enough that you're happy with it.
Yeah, yeah. I like how the storytelling of him kind of keeps things a little vague. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite details are like again the dark details, if you will, like when 20 rats were injected and 11 mice, and of all the mice but two died. And we just see them fall to their deaths. It's like, oh god, that's so dark when you think about it.
And of course, it goes without saying, but Nicodemus's design is like one of the best that Don Bluth has ever done.
That it is. I love that the mark of wisdom for our characters, for the owl and for Nicodemus, who by the way are buddies. We established that they're buddies. I love the fact that all the mystical buddies have glowing eyes and long mustaches.
Yes,
I
yes.
just love that as a signature so much. Just long gray mustaches and glowing eyes.
All right.
One more thing we should talk about Nicodemus: his tragic death, man.
Yeah, yeah, kind of like a predecessor to the ultimate Bluth death.
The act of kindness is what kills him, like moving the house and it crushes him. Oh God, horrifying.
Yeah, and once again, this is kind of Bluth just kind of being like, no, we're gonna go there. This epic beloved character is just going to perish, and he's going to perish because he tried to help someone, and that's a harsh lesson.
I mean, you know, for me, is the harken back here. So two things. So I think the two moments that speak volumes about these characters. With Nicodemus, it's the moment where Mrs. Brisby, they're both Brisby Reliance. Mrs. Brisby, she wanders off after the boat ride, and she says, "Excuse me, Nicodemus says, never mind." And then she comes back, and he hears her and says, "Can I come on the mission too?" He says, if you wish. It's just like giving her like the permission. I don't know. It's just really nice that it's like that little moment where she comes back and you can kind of tell this means something to her. Yeah, sure, why not? He was being all nice to her, and just earlier with Brisby in relation to the owl, because we're not going to really bring up the owl that much going forward, at least unless he comes up in the other thing you imagine. The owl. I love the moment where she doesn't understand what the owl is telling her about moving the house and how that's feasibly going to be possible. I just love this bit where she says, "I don't know what you mean, but I'll do as you say." It's really
yeah, that's good. That's good.
Really nice, really good relationship. That's the thing. Even though the mysticism kind of comes, if you're in the grand scheme of things, all the mysticism comes out of nowhere and shouldn't make any sense. But it's so grounded in how they're in the relationships and how the respectability towards the mythicism. I don't know. It plays tremendously well, even though it has no right to, and it works. I don't know. It's like a magic trick you pulled before our eyes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
All right, finally, Jenner, the bad guy that I forgot was even in this movie.
Jenner's cool, man.
Really?
I mean, let me put it this way: he's so
not that cool, Dragon. He's really not that cool.
Okay, look, forgive me for being a little positive, but no, he is. Look, he's cool, fine. He's cool, but not that cool, fine.
I mean, my whole thing is that I feel like the movie with its science versus nature themes, I don't really think it needs a traditional villain like this, Dragon. And Jenner has so little screen time, but I really do honestly just always forget that he's in the movie. I'm not even joking. Like, because I think the more memorable parts of this movie come from, like, the natural threats, like the plow or the cat. You know what I mean?
I mean, look, his main thing is that it's kind of a guy who's seeking power, and the reason he's seeking power is to avoid progress. Like, if we stay here, I can still remain top dog. If we go somewhere else, we might meet other people, and that might kind of upset what we got going on here. So I don't want that. So it's a guy who's kind of, I don't know, in some senses, Jenner is he's kind of a political bad guy. But again, it's like, it's not political in the icky sense of the word, but it's political in the sense of, he's very much like a Basil Rathbone, like, your old Robin Hood bad guy. Just like, he's the guy who's like all this guy's got like a charm and charisma within the performance. Like, a guy plays a good villain, I think. Paul Sheener,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Dragon, is he's like trying to move up in society in the rat society. That's like one of his goals is to kind of be the top rat, if you will.
Yes.
So in other words, Dragon, hold on. Sorry. God. There we go.
God.
That was forced.
Anyway, I think you're making a Radigan parallel with that.
No, I'm making a Radcliffe parallel.
Oh, sorry, it's even better.
Just imagine Jenner just walking down the stairs with his gold outfit. They will see how I glitter.
Okay, you joke, but in all seriousness, he does have he has a decent costume with that black cape. It looks pretty good.
He does.
That's what I'm saying. Like, the guy's got a lot.
You're right, Dragon. I'm sorry. In all seriousness, the better parallel to Jenner is definitely Radigan, not Ratcliffe, of the two Disney rat villains of the late '80s through early '90s. That is the best. That is the better one.
Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, he's very much kind of the anti-Justin. He's jealous of him. Again, he's kind of like, instead of the nobleman, he's kind of like the false nobleman, as it were. Might want to cue the. Okay, we're all good there. Anyway, I love the. What he kind of said. What he sounded like to me. I had to check who did the voice, because who he sounded. You're not gonna know who this is, but he sounded so much like John Larroquette. It was ridiculous. The guy from Night Court.
It sounds vaguely familiar.
Like basically the main guy from Night Court, the witty guy. John Larroquette does a lot of TV appearances and stuff. Like, he was on Boston Legal and the Practice. Anyway, point being, sounded a little bit like him. He's not at all. He's again, he's Paul Sheener, I think. But point being, it was a good performance, is what I'm getting. And he really loved the performance too. He actually went back very eager to re-record some lines. Oh man, we got the animation back. He's like, oh god, this looks like it's going to be really good. Let me do some of that again.
Nice.
Very passionate performance, and I love how vicious, how he gets very vicious and brutal when he's in combat. And just during that big sword fight at the end, very much modeled after the Errol Flynn. The Errol Flynn Basil Rathbone fight at one of the Robin Hood movies. I heard they modeled it after. It really shows too, and very much.
I kind of equate him to like a Clayton in terms of villains, where it's like he's not the most memorable part of the movie, and some of the threats of the movie come from a more philosophical level, but he is an intimidating bad guy, and I don't think people give Clayton enough credit for being an intimidating bad guy. And you're right, with Jenner, obviously, since I forget he exists, he's relatively underrated when it comes to blue villains.
Yeah. It's also kind of good. He kind of represents an element of being a rat that we associate negatively with. He's kind of the thieving aspect of the rats. He embodies the statement. Even in the movie, one of the lines of dialogue is, take what you can when you can. That's his philosophy, or he just wants to take and seize power, like when the opportunity strikes. And I feel, let me put it this way: if Jenner isn't as memorable, I think what's really memorable about Jenner is the relationship he has with his guy Sullivan. Where Sullivan is, kind of the portlier rat who basically he he had that great moment.
Again with the archetypes, but this movie is it's a very mythic movie, so I think it's appropriate that has archetypes. But the archetype is the villain's reluctant lieutenant.
Exactly, and I love that reluctancy in that story there, where he's a guy like he has like a second thought. We're like, oh god, are you going to do something that terrible? And it's like, no, I can't do it, man. I can't. Like, there are kids in there. I can't do this. And of course, he kind of strikes his guy down there as he betrays him. It's and of course that's his undoing. I love that that's his undoing. His mistreatment of his friends is his undoing in counter opposition to how Mrs. Brisby treats her friends. Like, is Jeremy kind of in the way more than he's helping? Sure, but she just pats him on and gives him a job to do, versus like Sullivan, where at the end of the day, Sullivan's going to throw a knife in your back and it's going to kill you.
Well, Dragon, I'll give you one thing about Jenner. He is a better villain than fucking Martin in Secret of Nim 2.
That is true.
All right.
Okay,
so Dragon, you know what time it is?
What time is it?
It's time to play Bluth or Dare! All right, so basically, Dragon, this is a segment where we discuss why this film belongs in a museum.
Had to get in there, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Essentially, for the non-indie fans out there, very few, I imagine, because who doesn't like indie in some way, shape, or form? Regardless. Anyway, the point being, we're going to talk about kind of the artistic merit of Don Bluth here. Like some of this, the indie, basically overall indie aspects, we just kind of touched on a little bit here. Just kind of talk about them a little bit more, like kind of what kind of Bluth is doing to really build his namesake, as it were.
All right, so like we said, you know what, Dragon? I'm surprised this never came up, but this movie is one of the first times since Walt's era that we use the multiplane camera.
Well, it's funny you mention. I was about to get to that. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
So this film, it basically, in essence, along with the multiplane camera, this movie did, and very similar to Snow White, and kind of the early Disney stuff. It kind of borrowed a lot of those kind of classic basically a lot of those old animation techniques from the golden era. Like there's rotoscoping in this movie. There's a multiplane camera. I can't confirm this from what I understand, from what I've heard. I don't know how it works, but from what I heard, they use an 80s. There's kind of an 80s computer equivalent to the multiplane camera, as in they couldn't do like the legit multiplane camera. They kind of came up with I assume an easier way to do it. It was kind of like not the cap system, but like kind of like a precursor to a cap system, where you're basically doing the kind of multiplane look on computer as with an 80s computer.
I mean, I don't blame them for not wanting to build an actual multiplane camera. I've seen an actual multiplane camera in person, and it's pretty staggering.
Again, they had the mortgage. Some houses, like Goldman, Bluth, and one of the other guys. They had the mortgage their house to make $700,000. I imagine that was probably going towards the multiplane or a bed, man. I don't know.
Okay, so I mean, we already mentioned a lot of the. Let's just kind of like quickly like bullet point some of the qualities we already went over just to get them in here.
Sure.
I feel like the characters are all relatively strong in this movie, especially Mrs. Brisby herself. The movie has a very, very strong kind of like mystical feel to it, very mysterious. It very much is its own identity. I
The
feel like it's a
sets.
what?
Well, I was saying like the sets and the setting and use of scale, where again, it's like we have
Yeah,
all these
absolutely.
sets. Bear in mind, it's a very small radius when you really think about it.
No, but that makes it all the cooler, Dragon, is the fact that it's basically just a farm.
Exactly. We do so much on. We go like all the dark locations of NIMH. We go there, and again, it's like we have like all these cobwebs and everything. But you're under a farm.
Okay, I mean,
Use
I
of
just
color.
yeah, use of color for sure, for
They
sure.
used gels on this too. I think it was like a relatively well. I don't want to say it was like a
Reds
brand
and
new.
golds.
They actually borrowed a Fantasia technique. So they did this thing where they basically use kind of like it's the best way I can put it is kind of it's like a hologram effect, and they kind of use that in Fantasia for some of the lighting effects. Basically, when Brisby kind of goes Super Saiyan, as it were. No, I'm kidding. When Brisby uses the amulet, when she uses the amulet, it has the big glowing kind of this effervescent sort of kind of radiating power effect. It's very much a pseudo hologram from Fantasia when they have these the kind of multiplying lights behind her. That's Fantasia technique.
Uh-huh. Nice, nice. Okay, so I think this movie is it might be the quintessential Don Bluth, put the kids through hell until they have a happy ending to get to on the other side.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, really, from top to bottom, like this movie is relentless. It's like it starts. Your kid is going to die.
Not even that. I mean, there's that, but I mean, also is bridging off that. Not even life or death circumstances. You also have just the sheer suspense of it all. I'm gonna give you an example. This is Brisby escaping, via the water dish in the cage. Like one, you have that great shaking cage animation, but also like I love this. It's an ingenious way for her to escape too, where she can't open the lock, but it's more sensitive. She has to go in the little water dish and kind of squeeze out the other side. It's great.
Uh-huh.
Again, the suspense, like, oh gosh, you're gonna get out. And we have all this bad stuff going on outside, and the house is sinking in the mud. Oh my god, when the house sinks in the mud, that for me, Tiki, this movie for me, it's the plow scene and the sinking house are probably one of the most effective scenes for me. Just that sinking house moment where, and that's what I'm saying about the scale of it all, Tiki. The scale is so small, yet again, we have these epic moments like that. It's almost like the opening of Toy Story 4, where again, it's kind of a minor, it's a very small setting when you really
Oh
look at
yeah,
it.
that's a great comparison actually.
The movie very much is like the opening of Toy Story 4, without getting
Hang
all of
on, RC.
that whole thing, where again, all of this, the stakes are insurmountable, yet it's really okay. Well, it's just the driveway. It's just the driveway. When you look at it, we all these giant moments unfolding, and again, it's like this moment of the whole movie. Again, it's a relatively short movie; it's like an hour and 20 minutes, right? Which again, I guess for the most part, is kind of a standard, anime, for the olden days, especially kind of an old standard length. But what I'm saying is, like in the last act movie, the crux of all, the house is very up-like in a sense. It's very up-like in that the house is kind of the center of things here, and the house is in jeopardy, and we kind of come to it's all about kind of the house itself is almost the character and a symbol of what Brisby's after. Because what does a house symbolize? A house symbolizes family and Jonathan Brisby's home, where she built everything in there and everything. So
Yeah,
again,
yeah, sure.
yeah.
Okay. One thing I want to mention with the music, and this is
Mm-hmm.
something that I'm pretty sure tracks with more than just these two films, but we have the main song. Well, actually, yeah, it definitely tracks with American Tail as well. The main song of the movie is also used as the main theme of the score.
Little fun fact: that song, written and in the credits, sung by Paul Williams.
Oh, nice, nice.
Another reason you need to watch that documentary, Diggy.
Yeah. And of course, with American Tail, we have the iconic "Somewhere Out There."
Yeah, we do.
And then, of course, in Land Before Time, we have the equally iconic "If We All Hold On Together."
Yeah, I can't remember what the one for all dogs would be because I know like you can't keep a good dog down kind of blends into the music a little bit.
Fucking, you can't keep a good dog down is a little bit of a step down from
Look,
it. We
there's
all
a
belong
better
together.
example. If there's an example, there's a better one. I'm sure. I can't think of it right. It's been a while. All right, forgive me.
All right.
That is a really
You
dark
can't
part of the
keep a
movie, though.
good dog down.
Remember, that is a really dark moment of that movie, though, when they had the reprise of Keep a
It
Good
is. It
Dog.
is. All right. Let's see.
Well, the
I
score. You
mean,
saw about Jerry Goldsmith a little bit.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
So Jerry Goldsmith, those who may not be aware, Jerry Goldsmith is kind of the best way I could sell you Jerry Goldsmith. He's kind of like John Williams' understudy in the sense of on so many of John Williams' projects, basically you're in that space of like, you don't know if you can get Williams or not. Again, I guess the in parentheses would say, is John Williams working with Spielberg right now? George Lucas, is he working with one of those two guys yet again? In that sense, the question usually Jerry Goldsmith will be the guy doing the score until like John Williams is available because Jerry Goldsmith was one of the go tos for Superman, and then Williams came in, and Jerry Goldsmith. I don't want to get in the whole convoluted thing. Like he was doing the Superman 2 score, but then of course that changed directors. And it's a whole thing I don't want to get into. But you know what I mean. The point being, Goldsmith is kind
Right,
of these.
right, yeah.
He's another great. He's also a great sound alike. He's done a little bit of sound alikes for Bernard Herrmann. He's done sound alikes for John Williams. He did the full on score for Poltergeist. It's one of the big ones that he did. But he loved doing the score for this so much. Like he put in more effort than he really had to in terms like he would come back to do other stuff because he really just he got into a real good rhythm with it where he saw the animation come back. Oh god, I can do that better. I can do that again. To the point where he would regularly work with Don Bluth, or at least at some points almost work with Don Bluth. In some cases they had to. And then basically he became the John Williams where, guys, I can't do it. Therefore they bring in James Horner. You know.
You know what? You know what this score kind of reminds me of? Is it kind of reminds me of the E.T. score,
A little bit.
where it's got kind of like that one iconic swell. You know what I mean?
I'm pretty sure Goldsmith had some fingers on that one too. Again, mainly John
Uh
Williams. I
huh.
think Goldsmith had a little bit. I can't remember if he had how much involved. You know, what I mean, that's what I'm saying. Goldsmith and Williams are kind of like it's like the shadow of John Williams at Goldsmith.
But both scores are like pretty understated, with the exception of the times where the music just really hits you and really just swells. You know what I mean? And when it swells, then it's very powerful.
Hey, here's something to bring up while we're getting the whole Bluth or Dare of it all. A few signatures of Don Bluth because we mentioned that with the music. Uh, Character movement. This movie moves like the Don Bluth characters move very specifically. That's where a lot of the great animation goes into like the specific movements of the characters. Like, if you look how a character like Nicodemus moves, like you don't see characters moving like that. The little effects, like yeah, it's almost like a Dragon's Lair effect where the cane blinks before it comes to him. It's like one of those things, right? That's how he animates
Sure,
magic. It's
sure.
kind of the poofy, kind of like it's not like not poofy, but it's blinky magic. That's kind of how he animates that. It's really good stuff there. And a little fun fact, the big distinction between like a Don Bluth film and a Walt Disney film, I mean specifically a Walt Disney movie when he was involved, is that Disney never directed the originals. Bluth did.
Yeah,
Practically,
definitely,
I want to
definitely.
say all of them, but I got to double check that factor. I know he's heavily involved. He directed most of
Oh, I'm
them, though.
pretty sure it was all of them.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, the
I
point of
mean,
like
he even
Blue
directed Bartok the Magnificent.
is Disney was more of like he's kind of the guy. He's directing the ship,
Disney
mind you, but
was
he's
the
not
producer extraordinaire.
precisely. That's the thing. Like the producer with a big P. That's that sense of the word. Like producer when it meant something. He produced this thing, man, out of his own pocket. Well, what she did in the case of Snow White, but you know what I mean. I guess another thing to point out would be the brutality in the last fight, which you kind of mentioned. So again, there's a lot of really eye-catching, really again in terms of like darkness that earns the light later on. A lot of stuff there in that regard. Yeah,
All right. Anything else with Luther Dare Dragon?
yeah. I already mentioned the lighting effects. I think we're all good.
Okay, cool. So, final thoughts. So, folks, like I said, this isn't my favorite Don Bluth movie, but I do think objectively it is the best. I will agree with the man himself when it comes to that. I think it is very, very quintessential when it comes to like just having that, that very, very menacing environment mixed with the high stakes and just like all around, just the good characters and the good animation. I mean, just all around, I think everything does come together for this to just fire on all cylinders. I don't have as much childhood nostalgia for this movie as I do for the other movies we're going to be covering this month, but that might be just because this movie does its job maybe a little bit too well. So, all right, Dragon, final thoughts?
Final thoughts for me, it's so rare in life that we get films that define a medium so well. Like we have our Snow Whites, we have our Toy Stories, or the films that surprise us, like an Iron Giant or something. Those films just kind of like that surprises, kind of like this movie with cult followings that they develop. This is Bluth's masterpiece. That took a man who who just he. Sorry, let me rephrase that. This is Bluth's masterpiece in the sense that it took a man who believed in Walt Disney and his core teachings of feature animation and had to go on a similar path to make his own, essentially his own Snow White to start things off with. That proves we haven't lost that spark to when we tell a special story. We haven't lost it. It's kind of a wake up call for the medium. We don't like don't let an industry get in the way of a work of art. Like most of Bluth's catalog, this film is about what's under our noses and the realities we're not facing sometimes. And you know, one could argue this is the kind of film that that kind of keeps the animation honest. And it's like, well, I guess that's the best way to kind of sum it up. It's like this is the film that keeps you honest, where the animation's not really cutting the mustard. Like, you know what, guys, this is the movie you should be making. Okay, you've slacked off, and this is what happens. The competition is at a complete left field. Like a guy that you kind of the ultimate underdog there, a guy who left the company. Says, oh, we'll never hear from that Joker again. He's going off to be the next Walt Disney. We'll see what happens. And whether he's the next Walt Disney, I can't say. What I can say is he made an impressive movie, and for this film and a couple others, he's going to be outshining a few of your movies, especially the box office and with the critics. So. Let that lie where it was. You need a wake up call, and Secret of NIMH is that wake up call. So good on Bluth.
All right, well, folks, we've conquered the darkness and come out with a happy ending on the other side. That's all for now until the next installment of Bluth-Tember.
Bluth-Tember.
Nicodemus.
Nicodemus. How's it going?
Oh, Mr. Plow, that's my name. That name again is Mr. Plow.
Oy.